Hi guys, I'm going to show you how to change the struts on an E90 BMW 328xi with Xdrive.
Let's go!
Okay, so first you want to prep the car, and safety first. We need some wheel chocks, and we need some jack stands, and we're going to need a jack to get the car up. For a BMW, you're going to need something like a race jack, something low to the ground so you can get underneath the front end. So let's get the car prepped. Next, you'll want to loosen the bolts on your tire. So for BMW, you got these 17 millimeters. You're gonna use an impact wrench just to loosen them up. Don't take them all the way off, or else you have a big problem. You don't want that. Now that the wheel is loose, we're gonna go ahead and jack the car up. Remember to have your chocks in and be ready with jack stands. Okay, when you jack this car up, you can go right from this lift point here. You can go ahead and put your jack right on that and lift. And then be ready with the wheel chucks in place and have jack stands ready. Okay, as you can see, the car is lifted. We have jack stands. Jack stands are pretty much making contact with this point right here. Actually, might lower this just a little bit. I do like them touching. Next step, we just got to take that tire off. Okay, so let's take a look inside the wheel well here. Here's the strut. And you can see this boot is pretty much demolished, and this is what's left of the bump stop. It's actually pretty still solid. The other side was worse, but this side actually, maybe it's passable. I'll replace it anyway. First thing we need to remove in here, we got a couple, the brake line hose right here. This needs to come off, this bracket. This bracket also supports, I think that this is a brake wear sensor line. And looks like a wheel speed cable. So you need to be really careful when you're working around these. You do not want to pull these out, especially your brake line. And if you break any of those, it's going to be a real bad day. But to take this bracket off, we have to remove this nut. I'll probably have to anchor this bolt back here. Okay, so it turns out that bolt was an 18 millimeter, so I put a wrench on that bolt side. And I think it's going to take a little bit of pressure, so I'm going to use a breaker bar on this. They're both 18 millimeter. Okay, so we got the nut off, but sometimes they can be a little stubborn, and for this I'm just going to use a hammer and a punch. That ought to get it out. Oh, unless maybe I'm just a weakling. Yeah, success. Whew, sometimes just got to add a little more elbow grease. That's pretty rusty though. I think I'm going to have to clean that up. So with that bolt out, this bracket should come loose. We'll see. Oh, just got to push on it a little bit. There we go. So push down and then back, and then the bracket is loose. Okay. Now let's see, the next part we got to take off here is the sway bar end link. And the sway bar end link, like that bottom bracket, it has a nut in the front, and not sure if you can see it. I'll turn the wheel maybe so you can see it better, but there is a nut back here that you have to hold on to. I believe it's a 17 and a 16. So we got to take those off. And then be ready with a jack, because when the sway bar end link comes off, the hub is going to want to fall. Now, this might be okay with a rear-wheel drive, I don't think so, but it's especially not good when you have all-wheel drive because you have this axle back here. So if this hub drops, this whole assembly drops out by accident, it will take out your axle, and that's a whole other job. So be ready with a jack stand, and you can put it just down here or on here, but just have something to give it a little support when it's falling. It'll also help you controllably drop the arm and maneuver it out. Okay, so got the nut off of here, off the sway bar end link, but it is stubborn and it does not want to come out. And I've tried a couple things. I even tried using a pry bar on it. Don't really recommend using that on the threads, but desperate times, desperate measures. I'm going to go ahead and try to loosen the top mount and maybe shake the strut around, and hopefully that'll give me enough play to get this bolt loose. Okay, so just for review, I got a jack stand under the hub, so this whole assembly doesn't just fall down and cause damage to the axle right in there. So to take off the strut mounts, there's 3 bolts up here, but I need to move the strut tower. So for this, I don't have the actual bit for that, but an 11 millimeter works just fine. Okay, I got the bolt loose from the strut tower, and this you can just kind of you can just slide out of the way so you can get to the other 2 bolts back here, and these are 13 millimeters. So let's go ahead and get those out. Okay, as I suspected, I loosened all the bolts on the top mount, and then I wiggled this around a little bit and it came out. Had to use the jack a little bit, kind of lift up on the hub and come down with it, but eventually it came out. Okay, so I got the sway bar end link out. I just tied it back with some aluminum wire so it's not hanging in the way. As you can see, it's clear. And the strut is starting to fall off, so make sure that you got it on a jack stand there so it doesn't fall all the way. You don't want to damage your axle or pull any of these lines like the brake line. That wouldn't be good. So one thing I am concerned about is clearance, taking this strut out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this fender liner in here. That'll just buy us a little more clearance. So let's take care of that. I think you're looking at 8 millimeter bolts, and you're looking at, I think these are 10 millimeter bolts. Okay, the liner is out, as you can see. And we got a lot more space in here to work with. So much more space for activities.
Look at all this floor space. So much aerobics in here. So many activities.
All right, time to wiggle this guy out. So in order to get this pinch bolt area open, you have to use a spreader tool. I'm just gonna stick this back here. Let's see, gonna stick this back here and spread open the bolt. Mission success, the strut is out. There we go. Okay, so we got the strut out of the car. This is what it looks like. It's got this dust cover cap on here, so I'm just going to go ahead and pry that off now. Let's go ahead, use a small screwdriver. You can just boop, pop it right off. There we go. Don't lose this. I don't think any of the kits come with a new one of these, but you'll want to keep this thing covered from debris because there are bearings and stuff inside there in that top mount. So let's go get the spring compressor. Spring compressors are really dangerous, so just make sure that you've got the business end aimed somewhere where nobody's going to get hurt. So got it safely compressed and took off the top nut that was inside of here. That's this guy right here. Be really careful when you're taking this off. Make sure you got most of the pressure off of there. You don't want this thing to shoot out like a bullet at you or break something. So this is a 21 millimeter nut. That comes right out of there. You take this piece off, it'll kind of look like this. Go ahead and flip it around. You'll see there's a bearing, a washer on here, and another washer plate. Try to keep these in order because you're probably going to have to reuse some of these parts. And let's go ahead and get the strut out of there. Okay, so the strut is out. You just got to pull from the spring. And this boot sits in there like this. You just pull it out. You know, you're going to have to wiggle it out through the bottom. And just remember the way that it's assembled, because we're going to have to put the new one together the same way and slip it back into the spring. Alright, so let's do that next. Okay, so here is the new strut. Now, put on your boot first. And then your bump stop. So it should look like this. On the old strut, you're going to have to take off this rubber piece and put it on the new strut. Just like so. So put together the shock mount again. You have to remember to replace these washers in the same order and replace the gasket. Okay, so when it's all together, it should look kind of like this. Now we just need to start tightening this up. So with these new Bilstein parts, it's no longer a 21mm nut. It is now a 3/4. And for this, I'm using a spark plug well. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to put a wrench over this so I can actually use this number 6mm Allen key, which has to sit in the middle. So it'll look something like this. Okay? So don't use an impact wrench for this. If you shear this nut, you're going to need a new strut.
Just stay out of my way, or you'll pay. Listen to what I say.
How about I just go eat some hay? I can make things out of clay and lay by the bay. I just may. What do you say?
Okay, so with a little bit of maneuvering, we were able to get the new strut in. We ended up having to maneuver the hub in such a way that we got the strut mount in first into its proper location, and then kind of met in between with these two. So you are going to have to finagle it a little bit, whatever works for you. Again, just not putting too much tension on your axle, or else you're going to have a bad day. And do watch your brake lines and stuff as you're putting it back in, and the sensors. You don't want to break any of that. But yeah, pretty much just reverse the process, and I'll take it from there. Okay, now when we're tightening these bolts back up, you do have to bring them up to spec. So this one down here, that pinch bolt is going to be 59 pounds square inch, and then up here on the sway bar end link, that's going to be 42 pounds. Just make sure that you use a torque wrench and cinch them down correctly. So 42 and 59. Okay, so I just got back from a test drive and mission success. The new strut works perfectly. Went over a couple bumps, no more noise. So that's how it's done, okay? Any questions, just ask in the comments section, and I'll answer back as quick as I can.